Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, how's the economy doing? But first, let's have a little COVID update. As they say, back in a moment.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, we have a number of important topics to talk about on Pennsylvania Newsmakers this week, and joining me to do that is John Cole. He's the managing editor of PoliticsPA, and John Micek. He's the editor-in-chief of Pennsylvania Capital Star. All right, John, I'm going to start with you. We're going to do a little COVID update. It's gotten very confusing about the masks and the vaccines. Am I right or wrong about that?
Well, I mean, Terry, we're in the midst of this summer surge now. Nationwide because of the rise of the Delta variant. We're taping on a Thursday morning. As of Wednesday, the most complete information I had, there were 1,493 new cases, looking a whole lot like the peak of the pandemic. So far, as we sit here again on a Thursday morning, there's not been a statewide mask mandate. Some school districts, including 2 in Dauphin County, are mandating masks. Penn State has mandated masks. State College Borough has urged Penn State to require the vaccine for returning students. The good news is the polling data we've seen is that vaccine hesitancy is down. But still, we're still behind that 70% goal that President Biden wanted to hit. Pennsylvania, encouragingly, is doing well, but we're still right now in the thick of this.
Now, Governor Wolf has said no shutdown. No, things are going along. He's saying, get vaccinated and wear a mask, but the governor hasn't weighed in as he did earlier, where
right. I mean, he has urged lawmakers to urge their constituents on social media, in their newsletters, to go out and get vaccinated. And and you are seeing some of that. There is this understanding, and again, Pennsylvania encouragingly is doing rather well compared to the nation for vaccine rates.
Yeah. Well, John Cole, the fact of the matter is that it's gotten pretty controversial. The subject matter that John Micek talked about in terms of should you require a mask, who should require a mask. I mean, the whole thing has gotten very complicated.
It is, and we're seeing right now in certain cities across the state, for example, there's now some restaurants that are requiring, if you're going to enter their establishments, that you have to provide proof of vaccination. We're seeing a few of them in Philly. I know there's outlets like the Inquirer in Philadelphia. I think the Post-Gazette also has like a running list of the places that are requiring these vaccines to even enter the building. And now, as we get closer to school starting, one of the things we're going to have to continue to see is what school districts are going to mandate you have to wear masks, which ones won't. But as of now, like John mentioned, is that Governor Tom Wolf has not had any statewide mandate in terms of schooling, and it's one of the things we're going to continue to follow as the weeks go on.
John, for kids, I'll call them kids, children under 12 and under, they've not received the vaccination, and they could have COVID and transmit it unknowingly.
Yeah, I mean, that is the concern. I mean, I'm the parent of a school-age child. She thankfully has been fully vaccinated and will be fine when she returns to class in a few weeks. But yeah, Terry, that's a genuine concern. They have these clinical trials going on for these younger children right now. But I mean, these kids conceivably could be asymptomatic, but transmit the disease to their teachers, who presumably have been vaccinated. But again, some school districts aren't mandating vaccines for teachers.
You have to wonder, given the deaths from the flu, John Cole, if we're going to now see more mandates for a flu shot, and other kinds of diseases that are illnesses, I'll put it, that are transmittable.
I mean, it's a great question. It's one of those things where, it's totally changed the conversation since COVID happened now. I mean, we saw a rush to get vaccinated. Like John said, Pennsylvania's vaccination rate's rather well for COVID-19. However, we're still short of that, I think, 70% threshold, I believe, that President Joe Biden had set out previously.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to, believe it or not, election 2020 is not over. It's not over. And we're going to get into that subject and particularly get into it for our state. And we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Well, most of us thought that election 2020 was over, but guess what? It's not over. Am I right, John Cole?
Yes. So again, even though the 2020 election's been certified, it's been finalized, there are still certain lawmakers in several battleground states that are still, I guess, putting up the fight that former President Donald Trump is still talking about to this day. So again, the election's been certified, audited. However, there are still some conservative lawmakers, for example, in Pennsylvania. State Senator Doug Mastriano, one of the more conservative members of the state legislature who represents parts of Franklin County, has been pushing for a, quote, forensic audit. Again, we've seen this in some of these battleground states in Arizona and Maricopa County. There's currently a, quote, forensic audit going on that is questioning, again, the results, even though they've been certified. Mastriano, who is the chair of the Senate Intergovernmental Operations Committee, has been leading this push. He specifically requested election-related material from 3 specific counties in the state, right. Philadelphia, York, and Tioga. And mind you, they're certainly totally different counties, geographical regions, and the electorate, and yet all these county commissioners have basically said they're not going to cooperate with this. And the question is this, now that Mastriano mentioned this week, he is still putting up the fight. He's talked to conservative outlets, and he's hinted that he seems like he wants to go forward with issuing subpoenas. And that seems like this matter will still go on in the next few weeks or could prolong, even though, again, the election's been audited, certified. There's still been an active push among some of Trump's allies in states like Pennsylvania to have a, quote, forensic audit.
John, that's been very, very controversial. The Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, has said, I will defend the counties if they don't comply with the order. Number 2, and this I think is also important, is once the auditors get into these election machinery, they literally have to be replaced, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, I want to clear up 2 terms of art before we move on. The election is over.
I know.
It's over. Joe Biden was declared the winner in Pennsylvania. 4 dozen courts across the land agreed. The United States Supreme Court agreed. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court agreed. The election is over. Joe Biden won Pennsylvania. So let's just. I
agree. I was just using that as
I know. I know. I want to
to
disabuse viewers of that notion before this kind of mythology festers into fact.
I agree.
The second thing is this is not an audit, not in any meaningful legal way. It is a forensic investigation. It is a fishing expedition by allies of the president, including Senator Mastriano, to try to undermine faith in the system. As again, there is no significant evidence of fraud that affected the outcome. That's been proven time and time after again. So, but to your question, Terry, yes, Attorney General Josh Shapiro has said he will help these counties defend against subpoenas. Senator Mastriano has said he is going to do this. Whether or not he carries through is another matter entirely. Fulton County, a Republican-leaning county in north central Pennsylvania that caved on this investigation request, had their machines decertified by the Department of State a couple of weeks ago. That's a couple of $1 million they're looking at to replace it. John Cole can back me up on this, but I think Philadelphia said they could face tens of millions of dollars if their machines were decertified. The cost here is incalculable for something that is in effect a fishing expedition, and also something that's designed not only to question the result of this election, but to undermine faith in the electoral process moving forward.
Yeah. And the fact is that there have been 2 investigations into the election already. As you accurately point out, they're certified, but there already has been an investigation into, I'll use this expression, widespread corruption, ultimately. And the rule, and when
Yeah,
they found
the Department of State conducted its own internal, an actual internal audit of the results. There was nothing found. This has been litigated in courts across the nation, including here in Pennsylvania, by appointees of the former president who said they had not a leg to stand on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to add one thing, recently Auditor General Tim DeFore, a Republican who won in 2020 while Donald Trump lost, he recently had an address to the Pennsylvania Press Club, and he talked about how he's not interested in any type of audit of the 2020 elections. We're even seeing some Republicans, it's a rift where Democrats are, State Senator Dan Laughlin, a Republican from Erie County who was mulling a run for governor, has also issued an op-ed last week saying he's opposed to it. So it's a matter where Democrats are certainly united, that they're on the same page. They're not entertaining the thought, but some Republicans.
Of the three counties that you mentioned, two of them are Republican, if I got my
York County and Tioga
right.
County.
Yeah, Tioga and York County, correct?
Yes, and even in Philadelphia, let's not forget, even though Philadelphia's it's a Democratic majority on the Commissioners Board, the Republican Al Schmidt also spoke out in favor with the Democrats. So that's been a matter where Democrats have been united on it. Republicans, again, there's some that have been saying we are not going to push forward with a, quote, forensic audit. However, there's still some of the most conservative lawmakers, those who are allies of Trump, that are still seemingly pushing.
All right, well, those two topics took up our time, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the state of the economy, a very important subject, after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by
Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, joining me to chat about the economy and infrastructure is David N. Taylor. He's the president of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association and one of the gentlemen who understands the economy. He's going to weigh in on the economy and some related subjects. David, as always, welcome.
Thank you, Terry.
All right. The last quarter, it looks like the economy nationally grew by a little more than 6%. Everywhere you go, there's help wanted, help wanted, help wanted signs, and restaurants and salons and other, it looks like they're getting back to, I'll say, somewhat normal in this state. So give us an update on what you think the condition of the economy is.
Well, I mean, we're in recovery. There's no question about that. As you mentioned, that there's a workforce crisis where employers can't find enough people to staff up, and so that's causing chronic shortages, not just in customer service, but also in supply chains, all the way up and down. One of the things that's noticeable about this point in time is the rise of inflation, and that Terry, when you think about it, 25% of all the money that's ever been printed in the history of the world has been printed in the last 2 years.
Oh my.
And that now we're on the precipice of one, possibly two more major federal spending bills in multiple trillions of dollars. And so the danger of inflation is very much upon us. And also that we're seeing spikes in energy costs, and that's also very bad for economic growth because, of course, every step of economic production requires energy. And so with higher energy prices, you have a layering effect that takes place. And so, this is why in Harrisburg, we believe that our decision makers need to focus on a pro-production agenda to maximize domestic energy production so that we can, do our part to keep the flow going, to keep prices down, and that will help to keep the economy going.
When you talk about energy, are you talking mostly about fracking and natural gas, or is it more widespread?
Well, I would say, there are a couple of things. First of all, petroleum, obviously. And this is what is just so baffling about President Biden's administration shutting down the Keystone XL pipeline to deliver more Canadian crude to the U.S., pulling the permits for the North Slope in Alaska to prevent energy from being harvested there, while at the same time begging the OPEC countries to increase production to keep American prices low. It's completely counterindicated, and that we need, both at the state level and the federal level, a commitment to American energy independence. But also when it comes to electricity, you know, Pennsylvania is number one, that we are the number one electricity exporting state in America. We power the grid, and that this is a very inopportune time for Governor Wolf's plan to impose a carbon tax on electricity generation in Pennsylvania. You know, Terry, every interstate compact to which Pennsylvania is a party, that compact was approved by the General Assembly, that Governor Wolf is trying to add Pennsylvania to the regional greenhouse gas initiative states without including the people's elected representatives.
Let's talk about natural gas for a moment. It's a huge part of the economy of the state, particularly out in the Southwest, in Beaver County.
And the Northeast also.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right, in the Northeast. And so you have Governor Wolf, who has supported it. Now he wants to do something with pipelines and other things, you know, how the gas gets from where it's produced to where it can, you know, be used by folks. And even President Biden, when he was candidate Biden, went out to Allegheny County, I think it was August of last year, and said, "I'm for fracking." And so, generally speaking, how important is fracking and natural gas to the economy of the state?
Well, it's tremendously important. The Marcellus Shale natural gas play is one of the largest on planet Earth, and that Pennsylvania has the lion's share of the natural gas in that play, that we can be a global leader in energy. And in fact, Pennsylvania is now the #2 producer of natural gas in America, behind only Texas, and that our contribution to the national energy portfolio has made America #1 in the world. The problem is that energy is in many ways stranded in the regions where it's produced, and that we need to do more to connect that energy, to deliver it to the downstream customers who can benefit from it. Yeah. What Andrew Cuomo did in New York to block off pipeline to New England is a real tragedy, because the economies in those New England states really need more power, and also that a lot of the fuel that's burned in the New England states is home heating oil and wood-fired stoves and furnaces and diesel generators. And if we had Pennsylvania natural gas just a few hundred miles away, that we can actually reduce carbon emissions by supplanting those other energy sources.
All right, all the conversation, not all of it, but much of the conversation in Washington and even in the state of Pennsylvania is about one word, right? Infrastructure.
Betcha.
And I want to get into the details about how important, and particularly what's in the $1 trillion bill that's in the United States Senate right now. And we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
Well, infrastructure, there's a big debate in the United States Senate right now about the nature of infrastructure. Well, David N. Taylor, I want to start out with this. Number one, there's a big difference between Democrats and Republicans, generally speaking, on the size, the amount of money that should go into infrastructure. Number two, and this is also important, there's a big difference between Democrats and Republicans on what infrastructure means. For Republicans, it's more often about roads and bridges, maybe even the internet. For Democrats, it's what is called family infrastructure. Money for child care. We can go through a whole list of family matters and other issues. Am I right or wrong about that?
No, I think that's a good analysis. And, again, infrastructure, I understand it to mean, the physical infrastructure that undergirds our civilization, roads, bridges, dams and waterways, our ports, our airfields, our rail lines, but also things like the electrical grid and the deployment of broadband so that all areas of the country and the Commonwealth can have connectivity.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the infrastructure bill in the United States Senate. 2,700 pages, $1 trillion. And when you look at, you try to find out what's in it, I mean, it's the complexity of the subject matter. It's almost like every senator gets a project for their state. Am I right?
Well,
or wrong?
this is no way to conduct the public's business. That it's unreasonable to believe or expect that any one person will have read that legislation to know what is in it and what it means. As people have gone spelunking down into the language, that they found all kinds of wild things, regulating Bitcoin, imposing a miles traveled tax. So again, America's economy, Pennsylvania's economy, really needs to have robust infrastructure that is constantly being serviced and upgraded and expanded. Roads, bridges, rail lines. Actually, Pennsylvania's inland ports are very important. But
we have a big state. We have a huge state.
We surely do.
Lots of geography.
Yes, that's right. We are the Keystone State, and so you have people from all across the country traversing our roads in all directions. And so, while infrastructure is important, it shouldn't be used as an excuse for all kinds of social service spending. And again, Terry, $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. It is 1,000,000 times $1 million. It's an enormous amount of money, and to be just slinging around those kinds of numbers without having it really tacked down to specific real-world needs, I think is dangerous.
Yeah, and the other matter is this seems to be more bipartisan than some other bills that passed earlier in this year. Congress passed a $1.9 trillion economic and COVID bill. Not a single Republican voted for it. But this time, when the infrastructure bill passed the House, 17, if I understand it, 17 Republicans voted in the Senate to advance the deal, and we had a number of Republicans in the House who went along with it.
Well, I mean, again, this is something where I think that there's consensus that we need government to do. Infrastructure that serves the public, that allows for people to go from one place to another, that allows the movement of goods. These are all things that Americans have recognize that we need government to do for us, to do it well, hopefully affordably, but it's a legitimate function of government. Using the name infrastructure as an excuse for massive social spending and other kinds of redistributionism and social engineering, that's something that I would not go along with.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on. We'll have you back, and it's interesting with the nature of the economy and where all this goes, with rising inflation and employers just looking, can we find somebody to do the work? All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.